They say first impressions matter. But what if the impression someone decides to broadcast about you is completely false? Before I go on, please like this video and listen to my story till the end. And let me know which city you're listening from, that way, I can see just how far my story has traveled. Okay. Let me take you back to that morning. You are actively damaging our company's brand with your appearance, barked Margot Halstead, standing at the entrance of our open-plan office like she owned the universe. Show up dressed like this again, and you'll be terminated. On the spot. The entire creative team froze, coffee cups paused mid-air, keyboards silenced. 20 pairs of eyes landed on me, or rather, the blazer I was wearing. A beautiful charcoal gray piece, tailored to perfection, sharp, clean lines, my favorite thing in my wardrobe. She jabbed a finger at it like it was a crime against fashion. And suddenly, I knew. The blood drained from my face. That blazer, it had recently appeared in Vera Lockwood's exclusive Forbes interview, our CEO. A stunning piece from the Lockwood x Stanton collection. Vera wore it in navy. I'd snagged the charcoal version on launch day, lining up at 5 a.m. outside the Stanton flagship store with a thermos and a dream. But Margot wasn't done. This isn't a thrift store, she said, sneering. Have a little dignity, Leah. Leah Carter. That's me. 3 years in this company. 3 years of late nights, major client wins, climbing my way from an intern to a marketing lead. 3 years of Margot Halstead taking credit for work I breathed life into. And now, this? I tried to keep my hands from shaking as I smoothed the blazer, not out of shame, but from the force it took to keep from exploding. Just then, buzz. A sharp vibration in my pocket. Notification, HR meeting. Urgent. 10 minutes. Boom. My heart dropped. The floor beneath me seemed to tilt. Margot smiled like a shark. I've documented everything, she said, lifting her wrist just enough for her Cartier bangle to glint under the fluorescent lights. Your attitude. Your failure to meet dress code expectations. HR has the full file. Failure. I couldn't stop myself. I just closed the Redwood Media deal. $2 million. She tilted her head and smirked. Don't worry, that presentation has already been shared with the board, under my name. My mouth went dry. Clean out your desk, Leah. Security will escort you out after your HR meeting. She turned on her red-bottomed heels like she'd just delivered a mic drop performance. For a moment, no one breathed. I caught Jasmine's eyes, my cubicle neighbor, but she quickly looked away. Guilt? Sympathy? I couldn't tell. Engagement break. Have you ever watched someone steal your work and smile while doing it? Drop a broken heart in the comments if you felt that sting of betrayal. I was halfway to HR, every step pounding with the thoughts of rent, savings, job boards I hadn't opened in months, when I heard the voice. Is that the Stanton Lockwood blazer? I stopped. Turned. And there she was. Vera Lockwood. CEO. Fashion icon. Industry titan. Gliding toward me with the kind of commanding energy that made the walls seem to shift out of her way. She was wearing the same blazer, but in deep navy. Our eyes met. Something unreadable flickered in hers. Yes, I said, my voice thin. Miss Lockwood. Vera, she corrected smoothly. She stepped closer and ran her fingers lightly over the sleeve. I helped design this fabric blend. Rare limited run. Where'd you find it? Fifth Avenue. I waited outside for hours. My words tumbled out faster than I could stop them. I've been following your collaborations since the Vogue launch. Your TED Talk on professional fashion changed everything for me. Her expression warmed. A fellow strategist in both business and fashion. Tell me you grabbed the matching skirt. Despite everything, I felt myself smile. My heart still thundered, but there was a moment of light. I love the blazer, she said. Same designer I use. Coffee later. I glanced down at my phone. That HR meeting was now in 4 minutes. She must have seen the panic cross my face. Something wrong? HR. It's urgent. Vera tilted her head. It can wait. And just like that, she pulled out her phone and sent a message. Pushed your meeting back an hour. Unless it's an emergency. Oh, if only she knew. The smug smile Margot had worn as she dropped the hammer, probably sitting in HR right now waiting for my execution. It might be, I said, unable to hide the nerves anymore. Walk with me, Vera said. Not a request. What do you say when the CEO walks you into an elevator and asks, who's your manager? Because what happened next? Let's just say Margot wasn't ready. Stay tuned for part 2. And don't forget to tell me which city you're listening from. I want to see just how far this story travels. The doors closed with a soft chime, sealing me into the private executive elevator with Vera Lockwood. My heart pounded so loud, I was sure she could hear it echoing off the mirrored walls. She pressed the top button, the executive floor. I'd never been up there. Only seen it from the glint of glass railings and the stories people whispered about during lunch breaks. She looked at me sideways. So, Leah. Who's your direct manager? I hesitated. Just one word. One syllable. But it felt like dragging a secret into sunlight. Margot. Margot Halstead. Head of Creative Strategy. Vera raised one perfectly arched brow, but said nothing. The elevator hummed upward. And this urgent HR meeting. Her idea. I nodded slowly. She said I was damaging the company's reputation with my appearance, and wanted me terminated. Vera blinked once. While you were wearing a piece from a collection I personally created. My voice caught in my throat. But I managed a tiny laugh, dry and bitter. She said I looked like I bought it at a thrift store. Like Walmart. The elevator pinged. The doors opened. And there it was, the executive floor. All polished chrome, smoked glass, and quiet luxury. The hallway felt like walking into another dimension, where people spoke softly but held power like fire in their hands. Vera walked like she was home, because she was. Come. We moved past the silent reception area, through double glass doors that opened without her touching them. Inside, her office was nothing like Margot's. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a skyline view, a conference table off to the side, and minimalist elegance everywhere you looked. She gestured toward a seat. Tell me everything. I blinked. Everything. She leaned back in her chair, the kind that looked like it cost more than my car. Start with today. But don't stop there. So I did. I told her about 3 years of silent hustle, pitching, leading, over-delivering. About the Redwood Media account, how I nurtured it from an ice-cold lead to a $2 million deal, only to watch Margot walk into the boardroom and claim the credit with a dazzling smile. I told her about the endless days I stayed late. About the quiet way Margot chipped away at my confidence with snide comments, backhanded compliments, and impossible standards. She said I wasn't a team player, I murmured, almost to myself. But I was never allowed on the team. Vera had been silent the entire time, just taking notes on her tablet. Now, she looked up. The Redwood deal. That was you. I nodded. I have every email. Meeting notes. Drafts. Voice memos. Everything. She tapped her screen. Interesting. Jim Conrad, the CEO of Redwood, told me how impressed he was with the young associate who knew their AI infrastructure better than their own internal team. She stared at me. Said she was always polished. Always prepared. Knew their needs before they said them aloud. I blinked. He said that. Oh, yes. And then he asked why you weren't in the final meeting. I bit my lip, throat tightening. Margot said it would be better if she presented. Because of her experience. Engagement break. Have you ever done all the work, only to be shoved out of the spotlight when it mattered most? Let me know in the comments. You don't need to name names, but we've all been Leah at some point. Vera pulled up a report. According to Margot's official submission, she closed that deal solo. She didn't wait for my reaction before clicking into another file. And interestingly, Vera continued, voice cool and sharp as glass, Margot's expense reports show she's been purchasing a rather ambitious amount of luxury clothing recently. Hermes. Dior. Chanel. She looked up, deadpan. Odd for a middle manager always complaining about budget constraints. A knock on the door. Her assistant peered in. Ms. Lockwood, Margot Halstead is here. She says it's urgent. Something about a termination file. I barely breathed. My body tensed instinctively. Vera's eyes didn't leave mine. She smiled slowly. How timely, she said. Send her in. The door opened. And Margot stepped in, all fake concern and haughty arrogance, until she saw me sitting across from Vera. She faltered. Vera, I was just coming to warn you about her, she snapped, pointing at me like I was a roach on her designer carpet. This is exactly what I meant. Completely unprofessional, showing up dressed like. She stopped. Her eyes widened. Because Vera stood. Revealing the exact same blazer I wore. Dressed like me? Vera asked, voice feather light. You mean, wearing a piece I personally helped design? Margot turned colors I didn't know human skin could turn. That's different. You're the CEO. So your issue is with hierarchy, not standards. I just meant. Tell me, Margot, Vera interrupted. Where did you get that Hermes scarf you're wearing? Margot's hand flew to her neck like it had a mind of its own. It was a gift. From a client. Or yourself. Vera's tone darkened. Because based on our expense reports, you've been quite generous, to yourself. Margot opened her mouth. But no words came out. And while we're talking standards, Vera continued, her voice sharpening like a knife's edge, Leah's expenses show modest client lunches and basic travel. Standard business costs. Meanwhile, you're charging champagne dinners and couture gowns under client engagement. That's part of strategy, Margot stammered. Image is important. Our image, Vera said, is built on innovation. Not Prada. Silence. Tension curled through the air like smoke. Leah, Vera said softly. Would you step outside for a moment? Margot and I need to discuss her future here. I stood. Legs shaking. Eyes wide. But just before I stepped out the door, Vera caught my eye. Don't go far, she said. We still have coffee to discuss. I walked out, heart hammering in my chest, feeling like I'd just escaped a fire. Her assistant looked up and handed me a glass of water. First time seeing her in action. I nodded, still breathless. He chuckled. Don't worry. When Vera invites you for coffee, it's already done. She's just making it official. Through the glass, I watched as Margot waved her hands, pleading, shouting silently. Vera. Still. Unshakable. Watching. Like a queen letting her enemies dig their own graves. 10 minutes later, Margot walked out. Furious. Speechless. And no longer employed. Vera opened her door and smiled. Leah, ready for that coffee? Trust me, you don't want to miss what she said next. Stay tuned for part 3. And tell me where you're listening from, this story's just heating up. The door swung open, and there she stood. Vera Lockwood. All grace, all power. All done with Margot. Leah, she said with a gentle smile, ready for that coffee? I don't even remember walking, only that my feet moved, and the next thing I knew, I was in her office again. But now, the air felt lighter. Margot's presence had been like a perfume no one wanted, heavy, cloying, toxic. Now, it was like someone had cracked open a window. Vera gestured toward a corner nook, a sleek, minimalist setup with a coffee station that looked like it had its own Pinterest board. She moved with such precision. Steady hands, quiet focus. Like someone who'd done this 1,000 times. She poured 2 cups without asking how I took mine, then handed one to me. Black, she said. You strike me as someone who doesn't need sugar to survive. I couldn't help it, I laughed. A real laugh this time, not the nervous kind. You'd be right, I said, taking a grateful sip. Still trembling, but a little less now. We sat across from each other in plush, cream-colored chairs. She leaned forward slightly. So, tell me about your vision for the Redwood campaign. Phase 2. I blinked. Phase 2. Vera nodded. Jim Conrad called yesterday. He wants to expand. Bigger scope. More reach. And he asked, very specifically, for the brilliant young woman who understood their AI integration better than their own CTO. I stared at her, stunned. He meant you, Leah. I swallowed hard. But Margot. Margot, she said, cutting in with a tone that made my spine straighten, is no longer with this company. She sipped her coffee like she was announcing the weather. Effective immediately. Terminated for gross misconduct, expense fraud, and creating a hostile work environment. HR will handle the details. I sat back in my chair, trying to breathe. She's fired. It barely came out. My voice cracked. Vera smiled faintly. Very fired. Have you ever watched karma come back around in real time? It's rare. But oh, when it happens. Drop a fire if you've ever dreamed of seeing someone like Margot get exactly what they deserve. She set her cup down gently. That leaves me with a problem, she said. I blinked. A problem. I need someone to take over Redwood, she said plainly. Someone who understands both the technical specs and the marketing vision. Someone with a proven track record of success, even when others tried to dim that light. My stomach flipped. Are you saying? The role, she said, folding one leg over the other, comes with a significant salary increase. Full creative control over your campaigns. And, she smiled, eyes twinkling, a clothing allowance. Because clearly, you have excellent taste. I blinked. A clothing. We can't have our new senior account manager camping out at 5 a.m. for designer drops. I choked on a laugh. Senior. Unless, she said, pausing, you prefer director of strategic campaigns. I'm flexible on titles. I could barely think. My body felt like it wasn't mine. This wasn't just a promotion. It was a rescue mission. A second chance. A launch pad. I tried to form words. Vera, I don't know what to say. She looked me dead in the eye. Say yes. Say you'll take back what was always yours. Say you'll stop letting mediocre middle managers write your narrative. I didn't even have to think. Yes, I breathed. Yes. To all of it. Her smile widened. She raised her cup. Welcome to your new era, Leah. We clinked glasses like two warriors celebrating a battle won without bloodshed. Then, with the smooth confidence of someone always 5 moves ahead, she pulled out a sleek folder. Now, she said, flipping open a page, let's talk strategy. I want this phase to be bolder, faster, and personalized. You in? I laughed, eyes still wet from the adrenaline. I've never been more in. We talked for an hour, about fashion, marketing, customer psychology. She switched between industries like she'd been born speaking them. I didn't just admire her. I wanted to be her one day. And just as we were wrapping up, she stood and smoothed her blazer. You know, she said thoughtfully, I almost didn't step in today. I looked up sharply. Why did you? She gave me a look I'll never forget. Soft and sharp at once. Because 20 years ago, I was you. Brilliant. Ignored. Undervalued. Working under a boss who hated my ambition. A CEO took a chance on me once. She paused. Then grinned. Also, anyone who camps out for a limited edition Stanton blazer clearly has the kind of commitment this company needs. I walked back to my floor, and Margot's office was empty. Her kingdom had fallen. And Vera. She told me to take her office. Part 4 is next, and trust me, it's the sweet taste of payback you've been waiting for. Don't miss it. And tell me in the comments, what would you do if you finally got the power back? I floated back down to the marketing floor like I wasn't quite touching the ground. Something inside me had cracked wide open, and light was pouring in. I didn't even have to ask what had happened while I was gone. Margot's office was empty. Empty. As if she had never ruled from that glass-walled box at the end of the hallway with her empire of sarcasm and silent sabotage. I passed her old desk, the place she used to perch like a hawk, waiting for the next person to pounce on. Now. Her nameplate was gone. Her chair turned awkwardly to the side. I barely got 2 steps into the room when Jasmine popped up from her cubicle like a squirrel hearing a bag of chips. Leah. What happened? Margot came storming through here with a box, red-faced, ranting. Security had to escort her. She whispered that last part like it was sacred gossip. Did she really try to fire you? I gave a small smile. She tried. And just like that, the floor buzzed again. Heads peeked over monitors. Curious eyes followed me like I was suddenly someone different. Not Leah the overachiever. But Leah the survivor. The one who stood up and didn't fall. I walked back to my cubicle. My desk. My home for the last 3 years, filled with folders, notes, highlighters worn down to nubs, campaign drafts scribbled on napkins and post-its. Evidence of 1,000 late nights no one ever saw. As I began to pack my things, someone approached. It was Bethany, one of the newer hires. She looked nervous, like she didn't know whether to speak or run. Leah. Her voice trembled. Is it true that you're taking over the Redwood account? I nodded. It's official. She looked around and leaned in. She told me last week that my skirts were too long. Said I looked like a retired librarian and that I'd never be taken seriously dressed like that. Her voice cracked. But I can't afford designer stuff. Not on my salary. I stopped packing. Bethany, I said, turning toward her, can you have a competitive market analysis for Redwood on my desk by Thursday? Her eyes widened. Yes. Absolutely. I already started something just in case. Good, I said, standing taller. I need a strong researcher. And I'm hiring 2 junior associates. Her eyes sparkled. You mean, your team? My team, I said, and something in my chest settled into place like it had always belonged there. Have you ever been overlooked because of how you dressed, looked, or simply didn't fit someone else's mold? Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. I picked up the last box from my desk, the one filled with all my forgotten ideas, the ones I'd been told weren't on brand or not ready yet. And I walked it straight into Margot's office. My office. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A view of the skyline. Enough space for meetings, brainstorms, and quiet moments of brilliance. The light poured in like it had been waiting for me all along. I set the box down on the polished desk and let myself breathe. Actually breathe. Not shallow survival gasps, but real, full air. A few feet away, in the break room, I caught a glimpse of the empty chair where Margot used to hold court, judging people's lunches, their shoes, their posture, their ambition. No one was there now. The crowd had dispersed. Her throne was gone. And in her place. Me. My phone buzzed. A new email. From Vera. Subject, welcome. Leah, welcome to the leadership team. A few things. Jim Conrad is expecting your call before end of day. Don't keep him waiting. Your updated salary details are attached. The clothing allowance is retroactive. Consider it hazard pay for surviving Margot. Our spring collection launches next month. You get first pick. Lead like you dress, with intention, authenticity, and a touch of unexpected flair. VLPS. The charcoal blazer looks incredible on you. Ever consider modeling for our next campaign? I reread the salary figure 3 times, convinced I was dreaming. It was double what I used to make, with bonuses tied to my results. Not someone else's. Another ping. From Jim Conrad himself. Ms. Carter, Vera told me the good news. I knew the brilliant strategist behind that proposal would emerge sooner or later. When can we discuss phase 2? I have aggressive growth goals and I want your brain on all of it. My hands were shaking again, but this time, not from fear. From something so much better: power, possibility, peace. I picked up the phone and dialed Jim Conrad. And as it rang, I caught my reflection in the office window. Same blazer Margot said would get me fired. But now, it was part of my legacy. You'll want to hear what I said next, and what came after that. Part 5 is where the Real building begins. I stared at my reflection in the office window. Same charcoal blazer Margot had mocked hours earlier. Same woman underneath it. And yet, not the same at all. I pressed call on Jim Conrad's contact and took a deep breath. The line rang once. Twice. Leah Carter, I said the second he picked up, trying to sound composed, like I wasn't still reeling from the morning's chaos. There was a beat of silence. Then, Leah. Finally. I was hoping Vera wasn't bluffing. His voice was warm. Confident. I've been waiting to talk to the woman who made Redwood's AI campaign actually make sense. My throat tightened. It's good to finally connect. He didn't waste time. Listen, phase 1 was phenomenal. But we're ready to scale. More automation. A smarter user funnel. But we need heart. Strategy. You. Me. Not Margot. Not someone pretending to lead. Me. We talked for nearly an hour. I walked him through ideas I hadn't dared to speak aloud under Margot's rule. Not because they weren't good, but because she never gave me space to have a voice. Now. Jim was scribbling notes. Laughing. Asking questions. When the call ended, he said, "You're going to make this something massive, Leah. I can feel it." And he was right. I was. I stood from my desk and looked around the office that used to belong to someone who silenced others to feel powerful. Not anymore. It was time to build something better. Have you ever been in a space that once felt impossible, and suddenly, it's yours? Tell me in the comments. What was your corner office moment, the one that made you realize you belonged? If it hasn't happened yet, don't worry. It's coming. I sent out 3 emails, one to HR about team restructuring. One to facilities asking to repaint the office walls, Margot had this awful beige, like ambition beige. And one to Bethany. Subject, first assignment Bethany, attach your competitive research draft to our shared folder by Thursday. I've added you to the Redwood planning calendar. Welcome to the team. Leah. A few minutes later, she peeked into my office. Nervous smile. Notebook clutched to her chest. Do you really think I'm ready? She asked. I smiled back. You were ready the second you walked into this building. You just needed someone who saw it. She looked like she might cry. I won't let you down. I know. Later that day, Jasmine stopped by. You're different, she said, leaning in the doorway. I mean, not different. Just. I don't know. Free. I looked around the office. I am. She looked down. My roommate works in data analytics. She's brilliant, but keeps getting passed over. I told her about you. Have her send me her resume, I said instantly. I want smart minds. Not fashion show extras. She grinned. You mean I can stop contouring my nose every morning just to get Margot's approval? I snorted. Please do. I'm looking for ideas, not nose jobs. She laughed, full and real. This was how leadership was supposed to feel. Later that night, I stayed late. Not because I was afraid. Not because someone demanded it. But because I was on fire. My mind was running ahead of me, already building out the next phase of the campaign, sketching out the org chart of my future team. As I left the building, the night guard, Tom, waved me down. Miss Carter, he said, beaming. Heard about the promotion. About time someone saw you. But what he told me next. It gave me an idea that would change everything about who I hired and why. Part 6 is next, and it's where I begin building something that can't be stolen. I was halfway through the lobby when I heard his voice. Miss Carter. I turned. It was Tom, the night security guard, warm eyes, always polite. The kind of person people rarely looked twice at, but always knew everything. I heard about your promotion, he said, stepping out from behind the desk with a proud smile. Finally. About time someone recognized your worth. I smiled, genuinely. Thanks, Tom. That means a lot. He hesitated, then added, how's your coffee budget looking in that new office? Strong enough for good beans. I laughed. I'll see what I can do. But he didn't leave. He looked at me for a moment, that soft hesitation that means someone's deciding whether to say something that matters. My daughter, he said finally. She just got accepted to MIT. My eyes widened. Tom, that's amazing. He beamed. Yeah. She's brilliant. Been building robots since she was 12. Full ride academically, but we're still figuring out housing, fees, all that. I felt my heart catch. She's looking for internships next summer, he added. You know, real ones. Not just filing or fetching coffee. Something where she can actually learn. And right there, right in that quiet lobby, an idea clicked. Tom, I said slowly, would she be interested in tech-integrated marketing systems? AI workflow design. His eyes lit up. That's her favorite stuff. She taught me how to use my phone better. I pulled out a card from my bag. Have her email me. Monday. Subject line, referral by my dad, the legend at security. Tom laughed, but his eyes were wet. You do that? I believe brilliance doesn't wear name tags, I said. And it sure as hell doesn't need a fancy title to be worth investing in. He nodded slowly. That's rare. Not anymore, I said, already pulling up a mental list of internship slots I could open. Not if I can help it. Who's someone in your life who's brilliant but overlooked? Tag them. Mention them. Or tell me about them in the comments. We need more leaders who pull others up, not push them out. I stepped into the cold evening air, the city buzzing as always, but now it felt like it was humming with me, not against me. 3 years ago, I was buying clearance blouses from outlet stores, afraid to take up space, afraid to speak too loudly, afraid to look like I was trying too hard. Today, I had a voice. I had power. And I had an inbox full of resumes from people who'd been waiting their whole lives for someone like me to hold the door open. The next morning, I walked into the office early. Before anyone else. Sunlight poured through the windows of my office. I sipped strong coffee, good beans, thanks to a fast facilities order, and looked through Bethany's draft report. It was sharp. Precise. Detailed in a way that showed not just intelligence, but care. Margot would have trashed it. Picked at grammar. Told her it was not elevated enough. I sent her a reply with 2 words. Excellent start. 10 minutes later, I got a Slack ping. Bethany. Did you mean to send that to me? Loudly crying face, 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 loudly crying face. Me. Yes. You earned it. Keep going. I'm behind you. I could feel the energy starting to shift, not just in me, but around me. And I knew this was just the beginning. By the end of that week, Bethany wasn't the only one crying over a 2-word email. Because next, I had to face the board. The old guard. The people who never once noticed my name. But this time, I wasn't asking for a seat. I was bringing my own chair, and a damn good PowerPoint. Part 7 is next. Don't miss it. The boardroom was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, the energy. You could feel the weight of decisions made over expensive coffees and carefully worded reports. I stood just outside the glass doors for a moment. Watching. Listening. 8 people sat around the glossy walnut table, all polished shoes and practiced nods. The kinds of people who read numbers better than names. Who had probably seen my face on memos and email chains, but never looked at me. Not really. My heart thudded. My palms tingled. But this time, I wasn't shaking. I adjusted the blazer, that blazer, straightened my shoulders, and walked in. Vera was already there. She gave me a quiet nod as I took my seat beside her. Ms. Carter, said the CFO, Mr. Langston, glancing at his tablet without looking up. You'll be presenting the Redwood Phase 2 strategy. Yes, I said, sliding the first slide onto the projector. That's correct. Silence. I took a breath and started. I didn't lead with numbers. I led with people. I talked about Bethany. About how under previous leadership, talent had been suffocated under optics. How creativity had been replaced with fear. How we lost 3 promising associates in 1 year due to what the exit interviews called appearance-based hostility. I watched the shift, subtle, but real, as the room leaned in. Then I gave them numbers. Projected revenue. Conversion rates. Automation pathways. Customer engagement spikes from Phase 1. AI-integrated systems for Redwood's next-gen tools. All of it wrapped into a rollout strategy that blended heart, data, and unshakable logic. When I finished, I didn't speak again. I let the silence speak for itself. A moment passed. Then another. And then. "Impressive," Langston muttered. "This is quite a shift from what Margot previously submitted." I didn't flinch. That's because it was never her strategy. The room went still. Vera sat back in her chair, smiling softly. Langston looked at her. "You knew?" "I did," she said. "I just wanted the rest of you to hear it from the person who actually built the damn thing. Have you ever walked into a room knowing you deserved to be there, but still had to prove it anyway? Tell me in the comments. Let's normalize stories of strength, not silence. And if you're still waiting for your chance, don't worry. It's coming. And when it does, walk in like Leah." I left the boardroom with their approval echoing in my ears, but that wasn't the part that mattered most. It was the looks. The changed expressions. The realization that I wasn't just another name buried in the junior ranks. I was the person who carried the campaign they'd bragged about in last quarter's earnings call. And now, they knew it. As I walked back to my office, my phone buzzed again. "Bethany. Just saw the Q2 metrics you attached. My research is helping that much?" Loudly crying face, loudly crying face. I replied instantly. "It's not helping. It's leading. I hope you're ready, you're presenting part of Phase 2 next week." She sent a voice note back. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Thank you." And in that moment, I realized. This was leadership. Not power over. But power shared. Given. Earned. Multiplied. But right when everything felt like it was finally coming together, I got an email. Subject line, "One last issue," from HR. Apparently, Margot had left behind a mess, and it had my name on it. Part 8 is next, and it's a twist I didn't see coming. Don't miss it. Just as I was wrapping up my notes from the board meeting, still riding that incredible high, my inbox pinged. Subject, "One last issue from HR Director, Jenna M." My stomach clenched. I opened the email, half expecting congratulations or maybe some final onboarding form. Instead, "Hi Leah. It's been brought to our attention that there's an open internal complaint tied to your name, filed under Margot Halstead's management. The original document was flagged for review during her audit. Before we close it, we'd like to speak with you to clarify some statements in the file. Please come by the HR office at 4:30 today. Jenna." I just sat there. Blindsided. Again. I could hear Vera's voice in my mind, "She's very fired." Yeah. Then why was her poison still leaking into my life? The document was attached. I hesitated. Then clicked. What I read made my blood run cold. Margot had filed a preemptive complaint against me, weeks ago. Claiming I was combative. Undermining her leadership. Obsessed with power. Manipulative. Overstepping boundaries. She even included selected Slack screenshots, ripped out of context, painting me as someone scheming for her job. There it was. A paper trail she built to destroy me before she ever gave me a chance to rise. And HR had almost acted on it. Have you ever found out that someone was plotting behind your back, smiling to your face while stabbing your reputation from the shadows? Tell me below. This isn't just office drama, this is real damage. Let's talk about it. Because too many of us stay silent, and silence is exactly what they count on. I sat with that file open for a long time. My first instinct. Rage. My second. Fear. What if this still affected me? What if, somehow, her lies clung to my name like cobwebs no one could see? But then, I opened a second tab. I pulled up my own logs. Emails. Slack threads. Meeting invites. Every deadline I met. Every pitch I led. Every campaign she presented as her own, with my name edited out. I started assembling the truth. By 4:15, I had a folder titled, Clarification plus Context. I walked into HR 5 minutes later with my head high. Jenna stood when I entered. Leah, thank you for coming in. I nodded. Let's clarify some things, shall we? And I laid it all out. Calmly. Logically. Relentlessly. I showed her the Slack thread before Margot's screenshot. The one where Margot asked me to take point and make the board like it was my idea. I showed time-stamped documents with Margot's name copy-pasted onto slides I'd created, days earlier. I even showed receipts. Literal receipts, her client dinners that were actually spa charges at a boutique resort. Jenna just blinked. At one point, she whispered, "Oh my God." I closed the folder. I don't want a witch hunt, I said. But I won't have her lies living longer than she did in this company. There was silence. Then, we'll be updating your file today. Completely. You'll have a clean record, with an apology. We should have asked more questions. We should have seen it sooner. I nodded. Thank you. And then, just as I stood to leave, Jenna said. She did this to 2 other women. The difference is, they didn't have your proof. That nearly broke me. Because I remembered the faces, the ones who left quietly. Smart. Creative. Gone. Swallowed by a system that didn't believe them. But now the system had a crack in it. Because I was still here. That night, I walked into my apartment and collapsed on the couch. But right as I exhaled, my phone buzzed with a message I didn't expect. From someone who'd been watching everything, from the sidelines. And what she said. It changed how I saw the entire last 3 years. Part 9 is next, and it's one of the most emotional twists yet. That night, I got home and dropped my bag by the door. No music. No TV. Just silence. The kind of silence that fills the room after a storm passes, but before the sunlight breaks through. I kicked off my shoes and curled into the couch, blazer still on, hair a mess, hands finally starting to shake from the adrenaline that had carried me through the day. I had cleared my name. I had presented to the board. I had stood up for the truth. And yet, there was a hollowness. Not sadness. Just space. A room in my chest I hadn't noticed before. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. Leah, I don't know if you remember me. This is Anna Reyes. We started at the same time. I left the company last year. I just saw the memo about Margot being terminated, and I heard what you did. I needed to tell you something. Anna. God, yes. Quiet. Sharp. Kind eyes. She worked 3 desks away, until suddenly, she didn't. I remembered the rumors. Personal issues. Didn't fit the culture. She just stopped showing up. But I remembered more than that. I remembered how Margot used to humiliate her in meetings. Correct her tone. Dismiss her ideas. Once, Anna came back from a conference and said, "I met someone who wants to collaborate with us," and Margot replied, "You? Network? Sweetheart, sit this one out." She had that same look in her eyes I used to catch in the mirror. I opened her message again. I left because of her. I never told anyone. I didn't think they'd believe me. Or worse, I thought I'd be seen as bitter. Weak. But then I heard what you did. That you stood up. That you stayed. Leah, thank you. You have no idea what it means to know someone survived her, and made it better for the rest of us. Tears welled up so fast I didn't even try to stop them. I didn't cry when Margot tried to fire me. I didn't cry when I faced the board. I didn't cry in HR. But this quiet message from someone who'd once walked the same tightrope I did, and fallen because no one caught her. This was the moment the weight broke. And I sobbed. Right there, on my couch. Tears sliding down, chest heaving, years of silence finally breaking open inside me. Not because I was broken. But because I had finally stopped surviving long enough to feel it. Have you ever received a message that made everything you went through make sense? Maybe someone said, "You inspired me." Or, "Because of you, I kept going." If you have, share it below. And if you haven't yet, let this be your sign, someone is watching you. And your courage might just be the thing that gives them theirs. I wrote back to Anna. I remember you. I always admired you. I'm sorry we weren't strong enough then to stop her. But I promise you this, we are now. She replied 1 minute later. Then I'm ready to come back, if there's ever space on your team. I looked at my team structure on my phone. There was a slot opening in 2 weeks. Bethany had mentioned needing someone with experience to help on UX for the new campaign. And suddenly, it was crystal clear. This wasn't about fixing things for me anymore. This was about creating a place where people didn't have to recover from work. Where kindness wasn't rare. Where ambition didn't come with bruises. The next morning, I walked into the office with one goal: build a team that would never have to survive what we did. But before I could even unlock my office door, I found something waiting for me. A small white envelope. No name. Just my title. Inside was a message that nearly undid me all over again. Part 10 is next, and it's the most personal chapter yet. Let me know when you're ready for part 10. This next chapter will take us to the heart of Leah's journey. A quiet, intimate moment of truth, and something she never expected to find. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. The building was still yawning awake, elevators humming, lights flickering to life, the scent of fresh brewed coffee just starting to drift through the hallways. I turned the corner toward my office, and stopped. There, taped to my door, was a small white envelope. No name. Just 2 words. Director Carter. My chest tightened. I pulled it down gently and walked into the office, the sunlight already pouring across the floor in golden strips. I didn't sit. I didn't even take off my coat. I just stood there and opened it. Inside was a single folded page. Handwritten. Black ink. Careful penmanship. You don't know me. I work on the 6th floor, finance. We've never spoken. I've seen you in meetings, once in the elevator. But I had to write this because I saw what she did to you. And I saw you survive it. My hands began to tremble. I've been on the edge of quitting for the last 6 months. Not because of the workload, but because of how invisible I've felt. How every idea I shared got passed off, ignored, softened until it didn't feel like mine anymore. Then, last week, I saw you walk into the boardroom with your head high. And yesterday, I read the internal memo about your appointment to director. That should have been the end of the story, but this morning, I came in early, and you were already here. The light was on. You were in your office. Working. That's when I knew. It wasn't luck. It was fight. And grace. And a refusal to let them silence you. You gave me hope. Thank you. There was no signature. No name. Just the letter. Just, that. I sat down at my desk, the letter in my lap, hands curled around it like something fragile and alive. It wasn't loud. It wasn't viral. It was quiet. Private. Sacred. But it hit me harder than any award or title ever could. Because it meant this was bigger than me. I didn't just reclaim a job. I became proof. Proof that surviving doesn't make you weak. That fighting back doesn't make you difficult. That rising, slowly and silently, is still rising. Have you ever been someone's silent hope? Or has someone been yours? Drop a heart emoji in the comments if you've grown through someone else's strength. And if you've never told them, maybe today's the day. I kept that letter in my desk drawer, right under the Redwood campaign brief. Not because I needed the validation. But because on hard days, and there would still be hard days, I'd need the reminder. Someone is watching. And your courage is giving them air. That afternoon, I walked down to the 6th floor. I didn't know who wrote the letter. But I looked at every face a little differently. I smiled a little longer. Listened a little closer. Made space in a meeting for a junior analyst to finish her sentence, and saw the shock on her face when no one interrupted her. We were already changing the culture. One tiny shift at a time. And I wasn't alone anymore. The next day, Vera called me into her office with a single question. How would you feel about taking the stage at this year's leadership summit? It was a dream, and a nightmare. Because stepping onto that stage meant telling the whole truth. And not everyone was ready to hear it. Part 11 is next, and it's the most public Leah has ever been. I was halfway through reviewing next quarter's creative roadmap when I got the call. Vera's assistant, calm, cheerful. Miss Lockwood would like a word, Leah. Can you step into her office? I grabbed my notebook. No blazer. No time to prepare. Just instinct. When I walked in, Vera was staring out the window, arms folded. She turned slowly. Do you remember the annual leadership summit? I nodded. Of course I did. It was the most high-profile event of the year, streamed live to every regional office, attended by our global partners, clients, and the press. The place where the company shaped its narrative. I said. I've watched it every year. She smiled faintly. Would you like to be it this year? I blinked. I'm sorry, me. You, she said. I want you to speak. 15 minutes. Your story. Your growth. Your vision. My stomach dropped. Speak. About what? How I was almost erased. How I wore a blazer that nearly got me fired. How I cried over an anonymous note in my office chair. I don't know if I'm the right person, I said carefully. You're exactly the right person, Vera said, walking toward me. And it's not about perfection. It's about honesty. You've lived a story half the company is quietly carrying. And if you speak it out loud, even once, they'll know they're not crazy. I sat down slowly. You want me to tell the truth? About Margot? Vera paused. Tell your truth. You don't owe anyone a takedown. But you do owe yourself clarity. And you owe others the permission to stop hiding. The silence sat heavy between us. She continued, softer now. When I was your age, I didn't speak. I let a man take credit for a project I bled for. And the silence cost me 2 years. When I finally spoke up, I wasn't polished. But I was heard. She leaned in. Be heard, Leah. I nodded. Slowly. Then fully. I'll do it. Have you ever said yes to something that scared you, not because you were ready, but because it mattered? Tell me in the comments, what was your moment? And if it hasn't happened yet, what would you speak about, if you had the mic. For the next 2 weeks, I worked on my talk. Wrote. Rewrote. Paced around my apartment at midnight, reciting lines. Scrapped the whole thing twice. Tried to make it cleaner. Lighter. Easier to swallow. But every time I did, it sounded like someone else. So in the end, I wrote the truth. Not the messiest truth. But the real one. About how ambition shouldn't be something you apologize for. How brilliance isn't defined by labels or hemlines. How sometimes, the greatest battle you'll fight at work is the one where no one even realizes you're bleeding. And how surviving should be celebrated, not silenced. The night before the summit, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. Not because I was afraid of failing, but because this wasn't just a career move. It was a mirror. And the moment I stood in front of that crowd, I'd have to face what I'd lived through, and who it turned me into. The next morning, I stepped onto the stage. The lights were so bright. Rows and rows of faces, cameras rolling, people whispering. I looked down at my notes. Hands trembling. Then I looked up, and found Bethany in the crowd. Sitting beside Jasmine. And 2 rows behind them. Tom. The night guard. Dressed up. Grinning. My whole body steadied. I cleared my throat. And I began. I wasn't supposed to be here. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that, 8 weeks ago, I was almost fired, for wearing this exact blazer. Nervous laughter. I was told I didn't represent the company well enough. That I was hurting our image. That I didn't belong in the rooms I helped build. And I believed that, for a moment. But then something shifted. Someone powerful saw me. Not as a threat. But as talent. And that changed everything. So today. I'm not just here. I'm leading. Not because I was handed anything. But because I stopped letting people dim me to make themselves comfortable. The room was silent. No phones. No murmurs. Just air. Still and full. I saw someone in the 3rd row dab their eyes. I saw a young intern mouth the word, wow, like she'd been holding her breath for years. And when I stepped off the stage, Vera was waiting in the wings. She didn't say anything. She just pulled me into the most real, grounding hug I've had in years. You didn't give a speech, she whispered. You started a revolution. The video of my talk hit 2.3 million views in 48 hours. But then, someone from my past saw it. And the message they sent. It cracked open everything I thought I'd put behind me. Part 12 is next, and it's where the past finally catches up. It started with a blazer. That morning, weeks ago, when I was told I didn't belong, because of a blazer. Now, I stood by the same office window where I once saw my reflection and wondered if I was enough. The same window, but not the same woman. Since the summit, everything changed, but also, nothing did. There were still deadlines. There were still tough meetings, quiet battles, and systems that needed breaking and rebuilding. But this time, I wasn't fighting them alone. I had a team. A purpose. A voice. Bethany was leading her first campaign. Jasmine was up for a promotion, the kind she used to think she'd never get without changing herself. Tom's daughter got an early offer from our internship program. She sent me a postcard that said, "One day, I want to build what you built." And me? I was finally home in my own skin. In my own leadership. Not trying to be Vera. Not trying to undo Margot. Just, being Leah. Fully. Loudly. Unapologetically. Last week, a new hire came into my office, fresh out of college, nervous, clutching a notebook like it was a shield. She said, "I just wanted to say. I saw your leadership summit talk before I even applied. It's the reason I'm here." I asked her what she wanted to do. She said, "Something that makes someone else feel seen." I smiled and thought, that's it. That's the real legacy. Not the title. Not the office. Not even the salary. But the ripple. The echo. The quiet impact of surviving with your heart intact, and making space for others to breathe. So, if you've listened all the way here, let me ask you this. What is your blazer? What part of yourself were you told to shrink, change, hide, just to survive? And what if that part of you is the very thing that sets you apart? The thing that makes you powerful? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. As I walked out that night, late again, but by choice, I smoothed that same charcoal blazer. The one that almost got me fired. Now. It was a symbol. Not of fashion. Not of rebellion. But of every moment I almost gave up, and didn't. The security guard waved as I passed. "Hey, Director Carter, working late again?" I smiled. "Only until the future's ready." "Looks like it already is," he said, tipping his cap. And maybe he was right. Because outside, the city was glowing. And inside me, so was I.